My name is Mary Benson, and I am 62 years old. And this morning at breakfast, I asked my daughter if the company had finally sent my pension. She looked me straight in the eyes and calmly said, "They did. They sent it last month, but we used your pension to renovate my in-laws' house. They deserve better, the way you always do." My heart stopped. I couldn't breathe. And all I said was, "I guess you still don't know that my pension is equal to your 5 years' salary from the company." Their faces went pale instantly. Before I continue with this story that has shattered my entire world, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and comment below where you're watching from. I need to know I'm not alone in this nightmare. Let me tell you who I am, because understanding my life will help you understand the depth of this betrayal that has cut through my heart like a rusty knife. I worked for Consolidated Manufacturing for 37 years. 37 years. That's more than half my life. I started there when I was 25 years old, fresh-faced and eager, believing that hard work and loyalty meant something. I worked on the assembly line at first, then moved to quality control, then to inventory management. I watched that company grow from a small regional operation to a national powerhouse. I gave them my youth, my energy, my health, and my best years. I retired early. Not because I wanted to, but because my body gave out before my spirit did. Arthritis in my hands made it painful to do the detailed work I once excelled at. My back ached from decades of standing. My doctor told me plainly, "Mary, if you keep pushing yourself like this, you won't be able to walk by 65. So I retired at 61, just last year, with a mixture of relief and sadness. That company had been my entire adult life. I'm not a fancy woman. I never have been. I live simply. I don't need much. A quiet room, my books, my knitting, a cup of tea in the morning, and the knowledge that I raised my daughter to be better than I ever was, that was always enough for me. I never asked for luxury. I never demanded attention. I just wanted to live out my remaining years with dignity and peace. When I retired, my daughter Stephanie, my only child, my precious girl, insisted I move in with her and her husband, Mark. "Mom," she said, holding my hands in hers with tears in her eyes, "you took care of me my whole life. Now it's my turn to take care of you. Please, come stay with us. We have that extra room. You shouldn't be alone." How could I refuse? My daughter wanted me. My daughter loved me. Or so I thought. I moved into their home 3 months ago, into a small bedroom at the back of the house. It was fine. It was comfortable enough. But slowly, gradually, I started to feel less like a cherished mother and more like an inconvenient burden. The signs were small at first, so small I told myself I was being paranoid, being overly sensitive in my old age. But I need to go back further. I need to tell you about the sacrifices I made, because that's what makes this betrayal so crushing. It feels like my chest is caving in every time I think about it. Stephanie's father left us when she was only 3 years old. Just walked out one morning and never came back. No forwarding address. No child support. No explanation that made any sense. He just decided fatherhood wasn't for him, I guess. So there I was, 28 years old, with a toddler and a job that barely paid enough to cover rent. I worked double shifts whenever I could. I took on extra hours during holidays when other people wanted to be with their families. Christmas Eve? I was working. Thanksgiving? I was working. Every single overtime opportunity that came up, I grabbed it with both hands because my baby girl needed food, needed clothes, needed a roof over her head. I remember going to bed hungry some nights because there wasn't enough food for both of us, and I made sure Stephanie's plate was always full. I remember wearing the same 3 outfits to work, rotating them throughout the week, patching the holes, because every spare dollar went towards Stephanie's school supplies, her field trips, her birthday presents. When Stephanie was 7, she wanted ballet lessons. All her friends were taking ballet, and she would come home from school with her little face so sad, asking why she couldn't dance like the other girls. I picked up a weekend job cleaning offices just to pay for those lessons. I scrubbed toilets on Saturday mornings so my daughter could wear a pink tutu and learn to pirouette. When she was in high school and dreamed of going to college, I worked 3 jobs. 3. I was at the factory during the day, cleaned offices in the evening, and did bookkeeping for a local store late at night. I slept 4 hours a night for 2 years straight. My body was breaking down even then, but I didn't care. My daughter was going to have opportunities one never had. And she did. Stephanie went to a good university. She studied business administration. I paid for every semester, every textbook, every meal plan. I took out loans in my own name because I didn't want her starting her adult life drowning in debt. I wanted her to graduate free and clear, ready to build a beautiful life. She was my pride and joy. My entire reason for existing. When she walked across that stage to get her diploma, I cried so hard I could barely see her face. All those hungry nights, all those extra shifts, all that exhaustion and pain, it was worth it. My baby girl had made it. After college, Stephanie got a good job at a marketing firm. She was earning decent money, building her career. She met Mark, and they got married 5 years ago. I was so happy for her. Mark seemed nice enough, a little quiet, a little reserved, but he had a steady job in finance, and he seemed to treat Stephanie well. That's when I met Mark's parents for the first time at the wedding. Roland and Jezebel. From the moment I met them, something felt off, but I pushed the feeling away. They were well-dressed, well-spoken, and they looked at me like I was something they'd scraped off their shoes. They lived in an older house in a middle-class neighborhood, but the way Jezebel talked, you'd think they were destitute and suffering. "Our house is so outdated," Jezebel would say, sighing dramatically. "The kitchen hasn't been renovated since the 90s. It's absolutely embarrassing when we have guests over. We deserve something nicer after all these years." Roland would nod along. "We worked hard our whole lives. We deserve to enjoy our retirement in comfort and style." I always thought it was strange how they emphasized that word, deserve. Like the universe owed them something just for existing. After Stephanie and Mark got married, I continued living alone in my small apartment. I was still working then, still pushing through the pain in my joints, still showing up every single day. And you know what? Even though Stephanie had her own life, her own husband, her own income, I still sent her money every month. That's right. I was still supporting my grown, married daughter because old habits die hard, and because I loved her more than life itself. Even when I had barely enough to pay my own bills, even when I was eating instant noodles for dinner to save money, I made sure to transfer $200, sometimes $300 to Stephanie's account every month. Just a little extra, I'd tell her. Just in case you need it. She never refused it. She always accepted it with a cheerful "Thanks, Mom. You're the best." Looking back now, with this knife of betrayal twisted in my gut, I wonder if she ever felt even a moment of shame taking money from her aging mother who was working herself into an early grave. When I finally retired last year, Stephanie was so concerned, so loving. "Mom, you can't live alone anymore. What if something happens to you? What if you fall? What if you need help? Please, please move in with us. We want you here. We need you here." I was touched. I was grateful. I thought my daughter genuinely wanted to take care of me the way I had taken care of her all those years. So I gave up my apartment. I packed up my modest belongings, a lifetime compressed into a few boxes, and moved into the back bedroom of their house. The first few weeks were nice. Stephanie would make dinner, and we'd all eat together. She'd ask about my day, about how I was feeling, about my plans for retirement. I felt wanted. I felt loved. But then things started to change. Mark's parents started coming over more frequently. They'd arrive unannounced, walk right in like they owned the place, and settle themselves in the living room. Jezebel would survey the house with this critical eye, making little comments. You know, this living room could use better furniture. When are you going to upgrade? The backyard is looking a bit shabby. You should really invest in some landscaping. And always, they'd circle back to their own house and its supposed inadequacies. Our kitchen is falling apart, Jezebel would say, looking pointedly at Stephanie and Mark. The cabinets are peeling. The countertops are from the Stone Age. We're too old to deal with contractors ourselves, and we just don't have the funds to fix it properly. It's so stressful. Stephanie would nod sympathetically. Mark would look uncomfortable but stay silent. I started to notice that whenever Roland and Jezebel came over, Stephanie would become tense around me. She'd usher me toward my room. Mom, why don't you go rest? You must be tired. Even if I'd just woken up from a nap. Then Stephanie started helping with my mail. Mom, don't worry about the mail anymore. I'll bring it to you. You just relax. At first, I thought it was sweet. Considerate. But then I realized I wasn't seeing all my mail. Bank statements would go missing. Letters from the company would disappear. When I asked about them, Stephanie would wave her hand dismissively. Oh, it was just junk mail. Nothing important. I threw it away so you wouldn't have to deal with it. But something in her voice felt wrong. Something in her eyes wouldn't meet mine. I started getting concerned. My pension was supposed to start coming through. The company had been processing my retirement benefits, and I needed that money. I had medical expenses. I had savings I was trying to rebuild after wiping them out for Stephanie's education. I needed to know that money was secure. Every time I asked Stephanie about it, she'd say the same thing, nothing's come yet, Mom. When it does, I'll let you know immediately. Don't stress about it. But I was stressed. Of course I was stressed. That pension was my lifeline. That pension represented 37 years of backbreaking work. That pension was supposed to give me security in my final years after decades of struggling and sacrificing. Meanwhile, Jezebel and Roland's visits became more frequent and more demanding. They'd corner Stephanie and Mark, talking about their house, their kitchen, their desperate need for renovation. We're family now, Jezebel would say, her voice dripping with entitlement. Family helps family. We've always been there for Mark. Now he should be there for us. I watched Stephanie being slowly consumed by their influence. She started dressing differently, wearing more expensive clothes. She started talking about status, about appearances, about what they deserved as a successful young couple. The warm, kind daughter I'd raised was disappearing, replaced by someone I barely recognized, someone who measured worth in dollar signs and social standing. She became defensive whenever I asked simple questions about my finances, about my mail, about anything related to my money. Mom, why don't you trust me? I'm handling everything for you. You raised me, didn't you? Don't you think you did a good job? Then trust that I know what I'm doing. The guilt-tripping was subtle but constant. If I expressed any concern, I was being untrusting. If I wanted to see my own bank statements, I was implying she was dishonest. If I asked about my pension, I was being paranoid and difficult. I started to feel like I was losing my mind. Like maybe I was the problem. Maybe I was just a paranoid old woman who couldn't accept that her daughter was taking care of her. But deep in my gut, I knew something was very, very wrong. Then came this morning. The morning that destroyed everything. I woke up early, around 6:30, like I always do. Old factory habits die hard. I'd been waking up at this time for nearly 40 years. I couldn't sleep anyway because I'd been worrying about money, about bills, about my pension that should have arrived weeks ago. I walked into the kitchen where Stephanie, Mark, Roland, and Jezebel were all having breakfast together. They looked so comfortable, so casual, like they were discussing the weather or weekend plans. I stood in the doorway for a moment, feeling small and invisible in my own daughter's house. Then I gathered my courage and asked the question that had been eating away at me for weeks. Stephanie, honey, did the company finally send my pension? I really need to know. I have medical bills coming up, and I need to. Stephanie didn't even look up from her coffee. She just stirred it slowly, deliberately, and said in this calm, almost bored voice. They sent it last month, Mom. We already used it to renovate my in-laws' house. They deserve something nice, the way you always do. The world stopped. I'm not being dramatic when I say my heart literally stopped beating for a moment. I felt it, this horrible pause, this terrible silence in my chest, before it started again with painful, erratic thuds. I couldn't breathe. The air in the room became thick, suffocating. I stood there, my hand gripping the doorframe to keep from falling because my legs had turned to water. Mark was nodding, looking proud of himself, like he'd just made some brilliant financial decision. Jezebel had this smug little smile on her face, like she'd finally gotten what she was owed. Roland was buttering his toast, completely unbothered by the fact that they'd just stolen from an elderly woman. And my daughter, my baby girl, the child I'd starved for, the child I'd worked 3 jobs for, the child I'd given everything to, was sitting there acting like she'd just made a perfectly reasonable choice. Like my pension, my lifeline, my security was just some extra cash lying around that she could spend on her in-laws' kitchen renovation. They all looked at me like I was the unreasonable one. Like I should be grateful they even told me. Like I should be honored that my stolen money went to such a worthy cause. For a moment, I couldn't speak. My throat had closed up completely. Tears were burning behind my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. I would not give them the satisfaction of seeing me break down. Then, from somewhere deep inside me, from that place where I'd found the strength to work double shifts, to go hungry so my child could eat, to survive every hardship life had thrown at me, I found my voice. It came out quiet. Steady. Cold. I guess you still don't know that my pension is equal to your 5 years' salary from the company. The silence that followed was deafening. Stephanie's coffee cup froze halfway to her lips. Her face drained of all color, going from a healthy pink to a sickly gray in seconds. Mark choked on his toast, coughing violently, his eyes bulging with shock. Jezebel's smug smile vanished like someone had slapped it off her face. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. Roland's hand stopped mid-butter, the knife clattering onto his plate. They all stared at me like I'd just announced the world was ending. Which, for them, it was. What? Stephanie whispered, her voice barely audible. I stood there, my body trembling with rage and grief, and let the words sink in. Let them marinate in the horror of what they'd done. My pension, I said, my voice getting stronger with each word, is not some small monthly check, Stephanie. The company gave me a lifetime pension, yes. But they also gave me a substantial bonus payout for my 37 years of service. They gave me severance. They gave me compensation for the health issues I developed working for them. They gave me back pay for overtime I'd never been properly compensated for. I watched the blood drain from all their faces as I continued. That pension represents over $400,000, Stephanie. $400,000. Your annual salary is $80,000. Do the math. Stephanie's coffee cup fell from her hand, shattering on the floor. She didn't even notice. She was staring at me with absolute horror, and for the first time, I saw her truly understand the magnitude of what she'd done. Mom, she gasped. Mom, I didn't. I thought it was just. Just what? My voice was ice. Just a little pension check? Just some pocket money from your old, pathetic mother? Just something you could steal without consequence? Mark had gone completely pale. He was gripping the edge of the table so hard his knuckles were white. Stephanie, he croaked, you told me it was around 20,000. You said it was a one-time payment of about 20,000. I thought. Stephanie couldn't even form a complete sentence. She looked like she might vomit. Jezebel and Roland had frozen completely. The reality of what they'd done, what they'd accepted, was crashing down on them. They'd just renovated their kitchen with stolen money. An enormous amount of stolen money. That pension, I said, my voice shaking with rage, was supposed to secure my final years. I was going to buy a small house. I was going to set aside money for my medical care so I'd never be a burden to anyone. I was going to, my voice broke slightly, but I pushed through, I was going to surprise you, Stephanie. I was going to give you money for a down payment on a bigger house. I was going to set up a trust fund for the grandchildren I hoped you'd give me someday. I was going to make sure you were taken care of after I'm gone. Stephanie started crying. Full, heaving sobs. Mom, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. The statement I saw just said pension payment, and I thought. You didn't think? I shouted, my composure finally cracking. You didn't ask. You didn't call me. You didn't say, hey Mom, there's a large deposit in your account, do you know what this is? You just saw money and took it. You stole from me. We didn't steal, Jezebel interjected weakly, her voice defensive. We didn't know. I turned to her with such fury that she actually flinched. You manipulated my daughter. You came here week after week, whining about your kitchen, guilting her, pressuring her, making her feel obligated to fund your renovation. You used your son to get my money. Don't you dare pretend you're innocent. Roland tried to speak. Now, Mary, let's all just calm down. Calm down? I laughed, but it was a harsh, bitter sound with no humor in it. You want me to calm down? You just stole my entire future, and you want me to calm down? I looked at each of them in turn, these people who had betrayed me, who had used me, who had stolen not just my money but my dignity, my security, my peace. Then I straightened my spine, feeling a strength I didn't know I still possessed, and made my decision. I'm leaving, I said simply. Mom, no. Stephanie jumped up from her chair, reaching for me. Please, we can fix this. We can pay you back. I'll take out loans, With what? I asked coldly. You just spent over $300,000 on someone else's kitchen. Even if you wanted to pay me back, it would take you decades. And that money is already gone. Spent. Turned into granite countertops and stainless steel appliances for people who aren't even your own parents. We'll find a way, Stephanie begged, tears streaming down her face. Please, Mom, I made a mistake. A terrible, horrible mistake, but please don't leave. I'm your daughter. I love you. I looked at her, really looked at her, and felt my heart breaking into pieces so small they could never be put back together. Do you know what hurts the most, Stephanie? It's not even the money. It's that you did this without a second thought. Without even telling me. Without thinking I deserved to know what happened to my own pension. You treated me like I was nothing. Like I was some senile old woman whose opinions and choices didn't matter. That's not true. Stephanie sobbed. Isn't it? Then why didn't you tell me? Why did you intercept my mail? Why did you lie to me for weeks when I asked about my pension? She had no answer. Because we both knew the truth. I'm going to pack my things, I said, turning toward my room. I'll be gone by this afternoon. Mom, wait. Stephanie followed me, Mark trailing behind looking shell-shocked. Where will you go? What will you do? I stopped and turned to face her one last time. That's no longer your concern. You made it very clear this morning that my life, my money, and my future are not your priority. So I'm taking back control. I'm reclaiming my life, my finances, and my dignity. Please, Stephanie whispered, her face crumbling. Please don't do this. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I know you are, I said softly. But sorry doesn't unspend $300,000. Sorry doesn't undo the betrayal. Sorry doesn't give me back the trust one had in you, the only person in this world I thought would never, ever hurt me. I walked to my room and started packing my few belongings. Behind me, I could hear chaos erupting in the kitchen. Mark's voice, angry and accusatory, how could you not know it was that much money? How could you be so stupid? Stephanie's voice, defensive and panicked, you saw the same statement I did. You said it was fine. You said your parents deserved it. Jezebel's voice, shrill and frightened, we didn't know. We thought it was a modest amount. You can't blame us for this. Roland's voice, trying to sound authoritative but failing, everyone just calm down. We'll figure this out. But there was nothing to figure out. The money was spent. The damage was done. The trust was shattered beyond repair. As I packed, my hands shaking with adrenaline and grief, I thought about my next steps. First, I would call the company's HR department. I would explain what happened and see what legal options I had. This was theft, plain and simple, even if it was committed by my own daughter. Second, I would call my bank and freeze all my accounts. I would set up new accounts that Stephanie had no access to. I would make sure that every remaining penny of my pension was protected from her and her manipulative in-laws. Third, I would find a lawyer. I didn't want to press criminal charges against my own daughter, the thought made me physically ill, but I needed legal protection. I needed to ensure this could never happen again. I needed to document what had occurred. Fourth, I would find a new place to live. Maybe a small apartment. Maybe a senior community. Somewhere safe, somewhere peaceful, somewhere I could live out my remaining years without fear of being exploited by the people who were supposed to love me most. The packing took less than an hour. My whole life in a few suitcases. It was pathetic, really. 62 years reduced to 2 bags and a box. When I emerged from the room, Stephanie was sitting on the couch, her face swollen from crying. Mark was pacing. Jezebel and Roland had apparently fled, probably terrified of legal consequences. Mom, Stephanie stood up, her voice hoarse. Please. Can we just talk about this? Can we? There's nothing to talk about, I said firmly. You made your choice. You chose your in-laws over your mother. You chose their kitchen over my security. You chose to steal rather than communicate. Those were your choices, and now you get to live with the consequences. I'll pay you back, she said desperately. Every penny. Even if it takes the rest of my life, I'll pay you back. Stephanie, you spent $300,000. At your current salary, even if you gave me every single penny you earned, which you can't because you have living expenses, it would take you over 3.5 years. But you're not going to give me every penny because you have a mortgage, car payments, and now probably a home equity loan for the renovation you can't actually afford. The math was brutal, but I needed her to understand the reality of what she'd done. I don't care, she said. I'll work 2 jobs. I'll do whatever it takes. Like I did? The words came out more bitter than I intended. Like I worked 2 jobs, 3 jobs, to put you through school? To give you every opportunity? To make sure you never went hungry or wanted for anything? Is that what you'll do? She flinched like I'd struck her. The difference is, I continued, my voice cold, I did that out of love. You'd be doing it out of guilt and obligation. That's not the same thing. I picked up my bags and walked toward the door. Mom. Stephanie's voice cracked. Don't leave like this. Please. I paused at the door, my hand on the handle. Without turning around, I said, you know what kills me, Stephanie? I spent my entire life making sure you'd never feel the kind of desperation I felt. I sacrificed everything so you'd never have to struggle the way I did. And the first time you had a choice between my well-being and someone else's comfort, you chose wrong. That's what kills me. I walked out the door and didn't look back. I called a taxi from my cell phone, thankfully I'd kept that in my own name, and went to a nearby hotel. I checked in for 3 nights, figuring that would give me enough time to sort out my next steps. The moment I closed the hotel room door behind me, I collapsed onto the bed and finally let myself cry. Deep, gasping sobs that came from the very core of my being. I cried for the daughter I'd lost. I cried for the trust that had been destroyed. I cried for the future I'd imagined, helping Stephanie buy a house, playing with grandchildren, growing old with dignity. All of it was gone. Incinerated in one casual breakfast conversation where my daughter admitted to stealing my life savings like it was nothing. The next morning, I made my phone calls. First to the company's HR department. The woman I spoke with was shocked and sympathetic. She confirmed the amount of my pension payout and explained that since the money had been deposited into my personal account, and since my daughter had legal access to that account as my power of attorney, something I'd granted her when I moved in, thinking I could trust her, there wasn't much they could do from their end. But she did give me the contact information for their legal department and suggested I speak with them about potential theft and elder financial abuse. That phrase, elder financial abuse, made me feel sick. That's what this was. My own daughter had financially abused me. Next, I called my bank. I explained the situation and immediately revoked Stephanie's power of attorney. I set up a new account that only I could access. I moved what little money remained, about $15,000 that Stephanie apparently hadn't gotten around to spending yet, into the secure account. Then I called a lawyer who specialized in elder law. She listened to my story with growing outrage and assured me that what Stephanie did was indeed theft, regardless of the power of attorney, because she'd used the access for her own benefit rather than mine. She breached her fiduciary duty, the lawyer explained. A power of attorney gives someone the authority to manage your affairs in your best interest, not to steal from you. We can pursue both civil and criminal charges if you want. Criminal charges. Against my own daughter. The thought made me feel like I was dying inside. I need to think about it, I told her. I understand, she said gently. But at minimum, Mrs. Benson, we need to document everything and send a formal demand letter. Even if you don't want to press charges, you need legal protection moving forward. I agreed. She drew up paperwork immediately, officially revoking Stephanie's access to my finances and demanding repayment of the stolen funds. Over the next few days, Stephanie called my phone 30, 40 times. I didn't answer. She sent text messages that varied from apologetic to angry to desperate. Mom, please pick up. I need to explain. Mom, you're being unreasonable. We're family. Mom, I'm sorry. I love you. Please come home. Mom, you can't just cut me out of your life like this. But I could. And I did. Mark called too, leaving voicemails where he blamed Stephanie for everything. I didn't know it was that much money, Mary. I swear. Stephanie handled all the finances. She told me it was a small amount. I would never have agreed if I'd known. Maybe that was true. Maybe he was just as much a victim of Stephanie's deception as I was. But I didn't care. He was an adult. He should have asked questions. He should have insisted on full transparency before spending someone else's money. The only call I answered was from a number I didn't recognize. It turned out to be Jezebel, calling from a friend's phone. "Mary," she said, her voice trying to sound warm and conciliatory, "this has all been a terrible misunderstanding. We had no idea the amount was so significant. If we'd known, we obviously never would have accepted it." "But you did accept it," I said coldly. "You pushed and manipulated my daughter until she felt obligated to fund your lifestyle." "That's not fair," Jezebel protested. "We're family. Family helps family." "No," I said firmly. "What you are is opportunistic and entitled. You saw a source of money and exploited it. You preyed on my daughter's desire to please you, and in doing so, you destroyed my relationship with her." "We're willing to work out a payment plan," she said quickly. "We can pay you back over time." I laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "With what? Roland's retirement? Your Social Security? It would take you 20 years to pay back $300,000, assuming you could spare any money at all. Which you can't, because you just renovated your kitchen." "What do you want from us?" she snapped, her fake warmth disappearing. "Nothing," I said. "I want nothing from you because you have nothing I want. You're shallow, manipulative people who use others to fund your lifestyle. Stay away from me. Stay away from what's left of my money. And pray I don't decide to pursue legal action against you for elder financial abuse and conspiracy to commit theft." I hung up before she could respond. Finding a new place to live was easier than I expected. I found a nice senior apartment community, not a nursing home, just a regular apartment building with mostly older residents. It was small but comfortable, with one bedroom, a kitchenette, and a living room with lots of natural light. The deposit and first month's rent took a chunk of my remaining money, but I didn't care. I needed a safe place. A place that was mine and mine alone. I furnished it simply with items from thrift stores and discount furniture outlets. I didn't need much. Just a bed, a comfortable chair, a small table, and my books. For the first few weeks, I felt numb. I went through the motions of living, eating, sleeping, taking walks, but inside I felt hollow. The betrayal had carved out something essential from my core, leaving behind a painful void. I thought about Stephanie constantly. Despite everything, she was still my daughter. I still remembered her as a baby in my arms, as a toddler taking her first steps, as a little girl showing me her artwork from school with such pride. How had we gotten here? How had that loving little girl turned into a woman who could steal her mother's entire future without a second thought? The lawyer sent the demand letter. Stephanie signed for it, and within hours my phone was flooded with more calls and messages that I ignored. 3 weeks after I left, there was a knock on my apartment door. I looked through the peephole and saw Stephanie standing there, her face haggard and tear-stained. My first instinct was to not open the door. But something in her expression, some echo of the daughter I'd raised, made me pause. I opened the door but didn't invite her in. "Mom," she said, her voice breaking immediately. Please, can we talk?" "What is there to talk about, Stephanie?" "I need you to understand," she said desperately. "I need you to know what happened. How it happened." Against my better judgment, I let her in. We sat at my small table, and Stephanie talked. And talked. And talked. She explained how Mark's parents had been pressuring them for months. How Jezebel would cry about how embarrassed she was of her kitchen. How Roland would make pointed comments about how successful children help their aging parents. She explained how she'd had access to my bank account and saw a large deposit. How she'd assumed it was around 20 or 30,000, still a lot, but not life-changing. How she'd been so worn down by the constant pressure from her in-laws that she'd made an impulsive, terrible decision. "I thought I'd pay you back before you even noticed," she said, tears streaming down her face. I thought I'd take out a loan or use Mark's bonus to replace it. I never meant to steal your security. I never meant to hurt you. But you did, I said quietly. Intentions don't change outcomes, Stephanie. You hurt me in a way I'm not sure I can ever recover from. I know, she whispered. I know, and I hate myself for it. I hate what I've become. I hate that I let Mark's parents manipulate me. I hate that I betrayed you. Then why did you do it? I asked, my voice cracking with emotion. Why didn't you just ask me? Why didn't you tell me what was happening? Because I was ashamed, she admitted. I was ashamed that I couldn't tell my in-laws no. I was ashamed that I was still taking money from you every month when I should have been supporting myself. I was ashamed that after everything you sacrificed for me, I still couldn't seem to get ahead financially. We sat in silence for a long moment. I've left Mark, Stephanie said quietly. Or he left me. I'm not sure which. Either way, we're done. He blames me for everything, and his parents won't speak to me now that they know the money is gone and there are potential legal consequences. Part of me felt satisfaction at that. But mostly I just felt sad. Sad for my daughter who'd destroyed her marriage, her relationship with her mother, and her own integrity for a kitchen renovation. I'm going to pay you back, Stephanie said firmly. I've already started. I sold my car and bought a cheaper one. I'm working overtime every week. I'm selling everything I can. It's going to take years, decades maybe, but I'm going to pay back every penny. Okay, I said simply. Okay? She looked at me with desperate hope. Does that mean you forgive me? I took a deep breath. Stephanie, I don't know if I can forgive you. Not right now. Maybe not ever. What you did was beyond betrayal. You stole my security, my peace of mind, and my trust. Those aren't things that can be repaid with money. I understand, she said, her voice small. But, I continued, you're still my daughter. I still love you, even though right now I don't like you very much. If you're genuinely committed to making this right, not just financially, but in terms of becoming the person I raised you to be, then maybe, eventually, we can find our way to some kind of relationship again. I'll do anything, she promised. Whatever it takes. I want to be better. I want to be the daughter you deserve. Then prove it, I said. Not with words, but with consistent action over time. Show me that you've learned from this. Show me that you understand the gravity of what you did. Show me that you're willing to rebuild yourself into someone worthy of trust. She nodded, wiping her eyes. Can I come visit sometimes? Can we maybe have coffee once a month? I thought about it. Part of me wanted to say no, to protect myself from further hurt. But another part, the part that had loved this girl since before she was born, couldn't completely close that door. We can try, I said carefully. Once a month. Coffee in a public place. No talk of money unless it's you showing me proof of payment into a repayment account. No pressure, no manipulation, no guilt trips. If you violate those boundaries even once, I'm done. Completely. Do you understand? Yes, she said. Thank you, Mom. Thank you for giving me another chance. I'm not giving you another chance, I corrected her. I'm giving you an opportunity to earn one. There's a difference. She left shortly after that, and I sat alone in my small apartment, feeling emotionally exhausted but also, strangely, a tiny bit lighter. I'm not naive. I know our relationship will never be what it was. That innocent, complete trust is gone forever. I know there will always be a scar where this wound was, and that scar will ache on cold days. But I also know that holding on to anger and bitterness will only poison the rest of my life. If Stephanie genuinely makes the effort to change, to grow, to become better, then maybe, we can find some version of peace. In the months since, I've built a quiet life here. I've made friends in the building, other seniors who are living alone, who understand what it's like to navigate these final chapters without the family support they'd hoped for. I've joined a book club. I've taken up watercolor painting, something I always wanted to try but never had time for. I've started volunteering at a local food bank, helping other people who are struggling the way I once did. Stephanie has kept her promise about monthly coffee dates. She shows up on time, she brings proof of deposits into a repayment account, usually $300 or $400 a month, which is all she can spare. At this rate, she'll be paying me back for the next 60 years, but at least she's trying. She's also started therapy, working through why she allowed herself to be manipulated, why she betrayed me, why she lost sight of her own values. I see glimpses, sometimes, of the daughter I raised. When she talks about her therapy breakthroughs. When she shows genuine remorse. When she asks about my life and actually listens to the answers. It's not enough to erase what happened. It will never be enough for that. But it's something. As for Mark's parents, I never pursued criminal charges. My lawyer advised me that the case would be complicated and expensive, and since Stephanie had legal access to my account at the time, it would be difficult to prove criminal intent beyond a reasonable doubt. Instead, I let karma handle it. Turns out, renovating a kitchen with stolen money doesn't bring happiness. Jezebel and Roland's marriage has been strained since the truth came out. Their son divorced my daughter and apparently blames them for encouraging the theft. Their friends in the neighborhood found out what happened, small communities talk, and they've been somewhat socially ostracized. I didn't even have to do anything. The consequences came naturally. Looking back now, 6 months later, I can see this experience for what it is, a devastating lesson about trust, family, and the importance of maintaining boundaries even with the people we love most. I learned that love without boundaries is just enabling. I learned that children, no matter how much you sacrifice for them, are still independent people who will make their own choices, sometimes terrible ones. I learned that financial security is essential, especially as we age, and that we cannot rely on anyone else to protect our interests. We must protect ourselves. I learned that betrayal from those we love hurts more deeply than any other pain, but that we can survive it. We can rebuild. We can find new purpose and new peace, even when our hearts are broken. Most importantly, I learned that I am stronger than I ever knew. I survived raising a child alone. I survived decades of poverty and hard work. I survived losing my health to a job that used me up. And I will survive this too. To anyone out there who's experiencing something similar, whose family members are taking advantage of them, stealing from them, manipulating them, I want you to hear this: you are not obligated to accept abuse just because it comes from family. You are not required to sacrifice your security for someone else's comfort. You deserve dignity, respect, and safety, regardless of your age. Set boundaries. Protect yourself. And if necessary, walk away. It's not cruel. It's not selfish. It's survival. And to children out there who might be tempted to take advantage of their aging parents, who might see their parents' pension or savings as something you're entitled to, understand this: that money represents decades of sacrifice. Every dollar was earned through sweat, pain, and hard work. It's not yours. It was never yours. And if you take it, you're not just stealing money. You're stealing security, dignity, and trust. You're destroying a relationship that can never be fully repaired. Is it worth it? Is any amount of money worth losing your parents' respect and love? I'll leave you with this question: would you forgive a child who used your pension without permission? Who stole your entire future for someone else's benefit? Tell me in the comments. Because I'm still not sure I know the answer myself. My name is Mary Benson. I'm 62 years old. And I'm rebuilding my life, one day at a time, after my daughter stole my future. Thank you for listening to my story. Please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and remember, family should lift you up, not tear you down. Don't ever forget your worth.